Hello and welcome back to my GTNH playthrough. It is Monday, July 2nd, and we're over here in my new crafting area. I've had this for a little bit, but only have two so far. But this is where I'm ultimately building all the crafting singularity ones with the huge crafting storage. Which I gotta say, I love these guys. I have been putting them to lots of use. In my case specifically, I've been making a lot of fake patterns. So fake pattern is basically when you rename an item and, have all the components for, say, like a multi-block in there. So you just fire it off as one craft instead of crafting all the different components. For example, I just set up today a QFT. Another one I set up and can see is done is the heliothermal plasma fabricator. The QFT in particular, I set up because I want to set up a second QFT specifically for osmium. And this guy actually needed for upgrading the forge more, get more use out of it, but also specifically to get UMV glass. I did not realize that UMV glass is actually locked out for me now, specific. Because I have some, not a lot, but I had crafted some before I updated to 0.2. But this unformed hexanite you get from a Mark V fusion, which coincidentally needs icorium. I got some things about that. But you need redstone plasma, which specifically needs the heliothermal plasma fabricator. Well, it says fusion tier 4 and 5, so I hope I'm set up to be able to do that, because there is technically a second form of UMV glass, which I can craft still, the spatially stuff, but it's not the greatest recipe. I mean, it's not the worst either. If I have to use this is fine. But what I want that for is, so basically been slow and not trying to knock out all everywhere I see is, I try that sentence again. What I'm trying to do is knock out all my bottlenecks. And one of my current bottlenecks, though being helped by the Forge of the Gods, is the fluid extractors. So I only ever set up 5 when I started mass spreading because of how expensive proxies were for me at the moment, or at the time. So now those aren't an issue. I think I have like 100 in here, or just shy of 100 proxy input buffers. So I've got plenty and they're cheap now and all that jazz. So you set up 16 UMV extractors with space-time, or I guess eternal coils. I was called space-time coils, but that's the plan. I want to set that up like either tonight or first thing in the morning. But so that was a little sidetrack into UMV glass. But I mentioned the icorium. I kind of love this game for how things kind of like integrate together. And, like in this case, some of it is not intentional, because I probably should have realized this sooner. But like this molten icorium, for example, someone pointed out in the comments, they pointed out 2 things. One, that I'm being silly, because molten icorium, on Friday had mentioned I'd set up the other recipe for getting icorium ingots. However, I'd set up this recipe with the large chemical reactor. However, I don't need to do this at all, because icorium dust. I have a lot of icorium dust. I didn't even think about checking, and you can see I have 130 million because I have 32 void miners set up in the deep dark, so I get every ore. So I've been having this, so that was unnecessary and just something to think about. But yeah, so with the last thing we also had done was set up the the Forge of the Gods over here. And at that point, I had only set up this one and wasn't really using it yet. What I've started to do over the weekend is basically move over everything that was kind of like bottlenecking, because my mega EBF is still very fast. I'd like gone pretty hardcore into that raid every tier, so that thing is fast, but this thing's faster. So I moved over some of the recipes that like do still like jam it up or create bottlenecks over to this to start with, and then I'll slowly start moving more recipes over. Just I wasn't sure how much of a bottleneck moving everything over to this would be. And it is really fast, so I'll be moving more over for sure. But the second thing I basically immediately went into was this melting core. Now, there's a lot of boring stuff that went into being able to craft this guy because the block itself, if we go into the melting core block, requires, where is it? These relativistic heat capacitors, which in themselves require thermal superconductors, which somewhere in here, where is it? I think I'm missing something. Maybe it's in the block assembly. Oh yeah, it's right here. Sorry. Harmonic phonon transmission conduit. The thing to research it is not that. Oh, it's right here. Excuse me. I did this early Saturday, but these field storage blocks, you can see tier 9. If you had to guess, you have to go all the way back. Luckily, not all the way to 0, but basically I had to sit there, craft all these guys, get all the components, set up a ton of patterns, do a bunch of scans. Thankfully, these researches are just in the scanner, so they're way faster than the research station ones that have been coming across lately. So it didn't take too long, but there was a lot of boring stuff to ultimately be able to craft this melting core. And then as soon as I excitedly plugged it in, realized I forgot I needed to craft material to upgrade it over here. So I've rectified that mistake with the plasma fabricator that I've just crafted, because all this stuff to construct, I threw that into all this, as well as all the blocks needed to install it into the fake pattern over there. So I'll be able to, I could literally set it up right now, but usually takes me a minute to set up things, so I don't want to do that right now. But this thing is awesome. I'm really excited and happy with it. I also did set up a second one of these HelioFlare Power Forge. So this one up here is the blast furnace, and I set up this one down here to be my regular furnace and moved every single furnace recipe over here. And substantially faster, pretty great. And the melting core for recipes, I've basically, again, moving everything over that was bottlenecking the system. And it is so fast now that, for example, if we hop over to the desert, between yesterday afternoon and today, I've crafted 2 more compact 5 reactors. So I've got 4 of these guys now, which is just speeding things up even more and making, like, everything's getting a lot faster. It feels nice how fast some of the stuff is to craft now. This guy I had set up before, but I forgot that I actually hadn't hooked it up either. Like, I'd done everything, and then I forgot to link the proxy input buffers. So these guys are all functional now and firing, so we're going a lot faster. Actually, because of fake patterns, have another one currently crafting, but it's going to be waiting a little, probably most of the night on Eternal Coil specifically. I think this will take another 5 hours, if I remember correctly. But that'll be something I also upgrade. The other thing I've been doing, just kind of without showing every single thing I've changed in here, is I just keep crafting a ton of UMV wireless energy hatches, and I'm just going crazy. Like handing them out like candy. Like, for example, just as a simple one, my UU matter fabrication, which I just teleported away from. I noticed I haven't been short on UU matter in a while, but I was like, walking by, I was like, you know what? I've got a bunch of extra hatches right now. Let me go ahead and throw it in here. So this guy's on the UMV energy hatch, which is fine that this one's so much higher tiered than these two, because these two usually outpace this thing by a mile. So yeah, it's pretty sweet. The other thing I did today, other big thing I did today, was go through and finally swap out, basically fix mistakes from rookie me setting all this stuff up. I swapped out all my output hatches to the bigger ones. I would have just honestly thrown storage buses in these guys, but I actually had actual output hatches instead of ME output hatches on pretty much every block. Like this one, even though I had access to the better ones at that point, because that's of my not knowing about filtering. And then I upped all the parallels, so I'm doing like crazy amount of water at once. The reason I wanted to do that is I was short on water when I went to, so I set up the fake craft for one of these Boss Einstein things, the second of the multi-blocks. And I think this one is actually the biggest, but I went to craft it. I was short water. Now I think the only thing I'm going to be short is iridium and IC2 coolant. So there's a few things in here I need to fix. Iridium, I could actually just throw back the... I don't actually need more iridium. I could just throw back in the plasma fusion reactor recipe. I took that out for the Helioforge recipe, but like if I'm only waiting on this, for example, I could just throw that back in there, run this recipe, and then swap it back out. Or I had just created that second QFT specifically to do molten iridium. I am going to use it in the mode where it directly outputs the molten form, so that'll be nice. And then I'll figure out what these are. But I did all that in service of crafting that Bose-Einstein thing, which is the plan for early this week. I don't think it should take me very long. It's just that main multi-block, the big circle one. If we click on, I believe it's this guy. Yeah, this thing is huge and requires a ton of blocks. Because they're all kind of huge and require a ton of blocks, so I have this one crafted, just not set up because I don't know where I want to put it. So we got this guy. This thing is the one that's like taking, I don't quite have the resources for, so I'm working on getting to that point. And then just one last kind of like funny note that is, I'm surprised it didn't come up to this point because I've had these recipes set up for a while. So obviously all my beamlines, you get more out of the beamlines if you use photonically enhanced wafers here. So if you click on any of these though, and you look at like the beam targeting changer, the difference between this guy and this guy, you get 512 out versus 256. So I don't use photonically prepared. I use the enhanced right off the bat, like once I went in and swapped all these recipes. However, to get the photonically enhanced wafer, you need this glowstone nanite. Make the glowstone nanite, you need AOC chip or ASOC chips, which apparently every time I'd craft this, I had enough excess that I was keeping up with the glowstone chips and wasn't doing anything. But today that finally ran out. So I was this was the first loop of like patterns I'd come across where I just like created a loop where I could not craft it anymore, which I thought was interesting. The only other times I've had that are because I have messed up the patterns. I haven't updated patterns as I went. So I did change the ASOC specifically to be able to, is the only one in the beamline area that is running off of photonically prepared wafers, so I don't end up in that loop again. Just thought that was kind of interesting. Also kind of weird that like it just worked out where I had it prevented itself from being able to craft up to that point from the excess. So I thought that was cool. Like I said, for tonight, the goal will be to set up these fluid extractors. I'm just waiting on some things to craft, especially now that I have this all assumes that plasma upgrade works. Otherwise, I will just be shoring up resources to be able to craft the Bose-Einstein set of multi-blocks and see what that's all about, so we can start continuing on progress. Not that we've been shy. Like, I'm very happy with our base right now. Things are so much faster. It just feels good compared to how it has felt for a little bit. I mean, it's felt good for a little bit since making the plasma mixer, but there was definitely a period there at the beginning of UIV that was pretty rough. So yeah, no, things are looking good. I'll get that going, and I should be back tomorrow to talk about this guy and the extractors and maybe the Bose-Einstein stuff. We'll see. I don't expect to be busy, so I'm pretty sure I should be able to make some progress, or at the very least decide where to put that thing. So anyways, I hope everybody had a good weekend, and I will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.